Some people know this. I don't exactly make it a secret, but before I started doing YouTube full time like this, I was actually a teacher. There is a shocking amount of overlap in terms of teaching and classroom management and being a GM. One of the best skills that you can learn as a GM or as a teacher is how to solve animosity between a person who's in charge and the person who is part of the experience. As far as classroom teachers go, this is obviously like a teacher dealing with a problem student, or in a D&D setting, this is the problem between a GM and a player who keeps challenging them. This shouldn't happen, but it happens fairly frequently, and a lot of people don't know how to deal with it. Especially in our type of nerd crowd, a lot of our players either go into the extrovert, like convention going crowd, or the introvert like writer crowd. I mean, there's lots of in-betweens, and there's a whole spectrum in between that, but essentially that's kind of what I'm addressing here. Typically someone who is challenging a DM is a bit more assertive, a bit more extroverted, and DMs tend to be writing creative types who, you know, they can socialize just fine, but when headed with a lot of conflict, sometimes they have some trouble with this. And essentially, my best policy is confront them after the game. A lot of people don't like to do this anymore, and I don't know if they think it'll cause a rift between friendships, but essentially speaking, I am someone who is of the firm belief that you need to address a problem right away, otherwise it's just going to get worse. People aren't mind readers. I mean, this sounds obvious, and in fact it really, really is obvious, but don't sit there in silence and expect someone to fix your problem for you. Do not expect them to sense it all the time and for them to fix it for you. Now, some GMs or some players are good at adapting to different play styles, like they are good at noticing that you're uncomfortable, but others either don't notice it or choose not to notice it or choose not to adjust for your benefit. Sometimes it's out of like bitterness, but most of the time they just have a completely different goal in mind. So I don't want to get too personal here, and I don't want to call people out, but this has happened even in my online games. Some players want something really, really specific. Yeah. Specific. Some players want something really, really specific, while other players are just okay with like playing with whatever the DM gives them. Okay, so in our Pokemon tabletop game, I am someone who doesn't like giving my players exactly what they want. For example, our character Lavi, who is one of the most popular characters in our show, in the beginning of the game really wanted a Lucario. Now, as a show writer and as a GM, am not wild about using the super popular Pokemon. I made like a vow at the beginning of the campaign that Pikachu would almost never be in in a positive capacity in our campaign. Pikachu is too popular and too well known. I do not want a player having a Pikachu. I said that at the beginning of the campaign between all my players, and they for the most part understood this. I made the mistake once of telling my audience this during a live stream, but then I gave them the option to have $5 to let them put whatever Pokemon they wanted into the Safari Zone, and it hit the rails real quick. People started putting in like, I want Pikachu but with the sword. I want Pikachu but a dragon type. Just fun little anecdote. We had a lot of money during that live stream, by the way. I paid for this computer, so thank you, audience. Hi. So, yeah, I don't like using Pokemon that are super duper popular. I want to use the more esoteric and more quirky Pokemon. I don't like throwing them in there. But X was super, super insistent about having a Lucario. So I talked to him outside the game and said, okay, I understand you want this, and you understand that I am not super wild about giving that, like just giving it. So I'm going to steward it up and make this Lucario weird, and you're going to have to earn its friendship. And we both agreed that that was probably the best way to do it. And this character became one of the most interesting and one of the most beloved Pokemon in the series. We made it like a samurai Lucario, and he had like this long past in history. And by the end of it, when like Lavi earned this Lucario's respect, he joined the team, and they practically became partners. Like a lot of people seem to forget that Charmander was actually Lavi's starter because he uses that Lucario so often. He's just so freaking cool. So if you are having problems with a player who just keeps challenging you and keeps wanting to like really interject, I would not address it right at the table, because here's the thing. If you really So if you are dealing with a player who is directly challenging you, I would do not challenge them back at the table, because that's just going to start an argument. By the way, teachers who are watching this show, don't challenge them directly in class either, because now you've made it public and they are going to defend themselves. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And there is no winner in this confrontation. So, for teachers and GMs, approach them after the game or after class. Let them know, hey, I understand you have things that you want out of this, and I have things that I want, and I would like to reach a middle ground. How can we work this out? Now, as a teacher, I would not exactly give them any kind of power, but you get the idea. The teacher aspect, it kind of ends from there, since you're not doing like a cooperating thing. So leave that, like, from this point forward, the teacher aspect is kind of gone. In most of these problems, you have a power gamer and you have like a GM who's like trying to tell a story. That's the most common example that I get. And what you want to do is ask the player what do they want, or what are they trying to get out of it. And if they just want to feel powerful, just ask them for suggestions on what would make that happen for them. A lot of times, all you got to do is like throw them that bone once in a while and acknowledge them, and that solves most of the problems. I mean, like in the case of X, he just wanted a cool Pokemon, and arguably Lucario is like one of the coolest ever. Yeah, I wanted to give him that. Like, I absolutely wanted to give him something cool, and we made a really memorable character. He also, he wants his lightsaber fight. He wants to fight one-on-one with a really strong boss. And X the Dark One, if you are watching this, it's gonna happen. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Promise. Promise, buddy. And that's really what it comes down to. You got to approach them after the game. You got to get what they want, reach a compromise. Let them know your point of view, that you are trying to tell your thing, and you are trying to cater to more than just them. Because most of the time, it's just one player who has a problem, and if you let them know there's like 3 to 5 other people at the table that you're trying to cater to, once you appeal to that, they're a little bit better. At the very least, you at least get the grievance away from the table, and you can address it there. It's hard to rip off that Band-Aid, but the more and more you do it, the better it gets. And sometimes those players become like your best GM helpers. They'll often present really cool monsters and ideas that you wouldn't have thought of. And like, I wouldn't have thought to put in that kind of character at all. I mean, why I didn't think that was necessary, but it becomes super duper cool when you do so. And yeah, that's really all the tips I have. Be sure to watch our Pokemon tabletop games. Be sure to become a patron so your names can show up at the end credits. And I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.